Hey friends, welcome y'all. This is the Southern edition of How to Stand Out on Your College Essays this fall, which rhymes nicely. I'm joined today by Renee Ferrerio, whom you'll meet just in a minute. I reached out to Renee because I was like, when we run these sessions, I'll be leading the main content today, but it's really awesomely helpful if we have somebody who's very experienced, who can, and very, I know is kind of loaded here, but experienced, who can answer your questions live. So sometimes it's Tom doing it. Today it's Renee. Renee, will you do us a favor, introduce yourself to the folks? Tell us who you are in the CEG verse.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Ethan. My name's Renee Ferrerio, and I am a senior college counselor at College Essay Guy. This is my fourth year as a college counselor, working for Ethan and working with lovely students all over the world, actually. And I have about close to 30 years. I'm edging up to 30 years of experience as a college counselor. I worked in public schools, I worked in independent schools, and now I'm working for Ethan doing this lovely work that we do. So, and I was available when Ethan asked, and so I'm glad to jump in here and answer questions in the Q&A for you today.
Thanks. I'm so glad you're here. So I'll be sharing my screen in just a minute and delivering sort of like the main content, the bullet points, the things we're covering today. I'll get into in just a second. Renee is standing by waiting to take your calls in the chat. So if you've got a question related to or even not related to, just throw it into the Q&A section. Renee is going to be in there typing away. And so we'll be working on kind of two fronts here. Sometimes we can get to like 40 or more questions, which is cool. So don't be shy. In terms of the main content, what we're covering today, I'm going to start with looking at a successful college application. Successful in at least two ways. One, the student got into the school she wanted to get into, and successful also in the sense that it's revealing skills, qualities, values, interests that really show who the student is, what she's going to bring to a community. As we're going through that, I'm gonna highlight two important qualities that I think admission officers look for. And the qualities that I'm going to be talking about are not just me guessing. I did a pretty comprehensive analysis of what colleges are looking for. Earlier this year, I did a 9-part podcast with Tom Campbell on what colleges look for, which you can check out on our podcast. And then I went and looked at 100 different school websites. I had somebody help with this, but looked at school websites to analyze what do colleges admissions look for. Had some back and forth with some folks on our team, including Renee, and we kind of were like, yeah, we arrived at these what we call these college admission nutrients. So I'll share a little bit about that. I'm going to look at an essay that's on a more common topic, which in this case today is soccer. How do you make a soccer essay work well? We'll talk about that. Then I'm going to talk to you briefly about how to make an awesome activities list and how to use that additional information section, which I'll explain more about later. But basically, this is a section of the Common App that allows you to talk about other sides of yourself. So the question is, what kind of stuff do you put there? So I'll get to that. And then I'll tell you briefly about, we've got a couple awesome courses coming up in September. These are courses that the first one's on the personal statement, which maybe Diana, you could just share the link to these if you would. Diana's our awesome moderator today. Thank you, Diana, who is a star in her own right. But we've got an awesome course on the personal statement that's coming up in about a month. And then one on the college application and supplemental essays. So today you're kind of getting a sneak peek of that, but everything today is free. The courses also are pay what you can. And if you sign up for the first one, you get 50% off the second one, which is cool. So more on that soon. And yeah, well, I'll get into that later. And then we'll do Q&A, but we'll do Q&A throughout. So let's share my screen. Renee is going to go into question answering mode. Thanks, Renee. And here, I'm just going to share this awesome application with y'all. So this was a student, and I know I'm not sharing just yet. Let me just click it. There we go. Okay. So this is a student that I worked with. It's been a couple years. It's been maybe like 3 years, I think, since I worked with a student. And the way that I like to work with students is we do the brainstorming. We get into with my coaches, we get into like super creative mode where we're kind of looking at what are the different sides of you and how do they manifest themselves in the application. We go through the process of drafting, figuring out the supplemental essays, and then when we're close to done, we create what's called an almost done document. So you're looking at the almost done document from the student, and what's included on that document is the student's personal statement, her activities list, her additional information section, and her supplemental essays for Columbia. This is the school that she was applying early decision at. It was essentially the only school she applied to, and she was an international student. which is to say she was applying from overseas. And it's harder to get into schools, when you're applying as an international student often. Just it's very, very competitive. I'll just put it that way. So I want to walk you through this and what I think some different tips that you can apply when you're looking at writing your own application. So I want to read you through this personal statement. I might zoom past a few of the parts just for the sake of time today. And I'll say this student had written an initial draft of her application, or her personal statement rather, and it was based on her creativity and how her creativity showed up in her life in different ways. And then after a couple months of working on it, and she got some feedback from her counselor, she's like, I think I can go deeper here. And so we looked at some of the pieces that she'd been working on in terms of her creativity, and she realized that there was this common theme of searching for home. So the theme of her essay, you'll see here at the start, she says, about a decade ago, a teacher asked me, what would be the first thing you'd include if you were building a city? Without hesitation, I said, an airport. I grew up traveling between Shanghai and San Francisco and around the world. But amid the hustle and bustle, the smell of stir-fried bok choy and 5 p.m. elevators, love that detail, by the way, and turkeys jostling along on our morning walks to Emerald Glen Park in Pleasanton, California, my mother was the constant. I called both China and America home, but felt most at home in her presence. But I left my mother too. So what she's sort of setting up here is it's kind of what I would call a narrative opening in the sense that it's a story, but she's raising a question in her mind. And the question is related to home. So she found home in her mom, but then she left her mom. So the question in my mind is like, okay, where's home? She says, 3 years ago, I passed through the familiar Shanghai airport, but to an unfamiliar place, the Southwest High School in San Ramon, California. Holding an American passport, I arrived as an international student and often felt as if I was the other. Now, there's a common trope here where students often write about feeling like they're a third culture kid, not quite this culture, not quite the other. I also was a third culture kid. And there is a way of writing about this that could seem very common, but she avoids some of the common tropes. And she writes about it with such specificity and detail, and you'll notice in a second what I mean. And she reveals so many different sides of herself that I think that's what helps her stand out here. She says, that's when home became my mother's voice. I'm going to just start highlighting instances where she mentions the word home. Though disturbed by intermittent coughs, that immediately recognizable sound remained tender and serene. And despite the unease in my questions about her chemotherapy, I found and find refuge in her voice, the place of comfort and strength, warmth and familiarity. So she lists one of her homes as her mom's voice. And this was a big deal in her life because her mother had cancer, as you can kind of tell subtly, but it's there. And this kind of rocked her, but she didn't want to write an essay that was all about dealing with her mother's illness. She wanted to show other sides of herself. So notice the next paragraph. Still searching for a sense of belonging, so that's kind of related to home, beyond those Friday night calls, I began keeping a food blog. And it was called also The Foods of Home. She didn't know that she was going to make home her theme for her essay, but she was like, oh my gosh, when we kind of landed on this theme. In my post, she says, I described the taste of sweet and sour pork in Hangzhou, ruminating on Jiling Bridge, which I walked by, with Lingji, my hidden middle name. I wondered if I found some ancestry in that city. Soon, I discovered another piece of home in New York City's Chelsea market, too, while licking fresh strawberry gelato and watching the crowds pass by. Through food, here's another place she found home, I often felt more connected with people and places around the world. Somehow, those sensory experiences, the taste, smell, texture, the look of a morsel, and even the surrounding air, triggered certain memories and a burst of rose-tinted nostalgia. Now, what I love that she's doing here, besides there's some nicely poetic language, which is not required to get into a great school, but it's nice when it's there, is she's got lots of specifics. And when I look at these sentences, I go, are these sentences that someone else could have written? And certainly I look at this and I think, I could ask anybody on this call right now, there are 700 of you, could any of you have written this sentence and been truthful? No, this is not a sentence that you could have written because it's particularly from her experiences. So consider this. Each sentence in your application is an opportunity to either blend in or stand out. You can either blend in or you can stand out. And how do you know? If you've already worked on your application, take a look at your personal statement and pick sentence number 5. Does it sound like something someone else could have written? If so, it's probably an opportunity for some revision so you can get into some of these specifics that'll help your essay pop out. Yet somehow, she says something never felt right. So she's raising the question again of the essay. Perhaps those romanticized feelings began to resemble home only because I was constantly moving, yearning for home. So this is what the essay is about, a yearning for home. And the question in our minds, where will she find it? Maybe it was my eagerness to confirm that home could reside in the mind that made me see it everywhere I went. But could these feelings and thoughts truly constitute a home? I love that she's asking big questions. To me, this speaks of intellectual curiosity. So she's basically saying, you're getting the sense that she's a critical thinker. Intrigued, she says, I sought to find a more concrete connection to the physical place in which I lived. Last year, I developed a photojournalism project aiming to capture the people and stories of Ojai, to connect myself and my school community to our town. I interviewed the owner of an organic family restaurant, enjoying stories about his favorite purple cauliflower. I met Kate, the baker of a gourmet bread shop, and learned about her 8-year-old daughter's love of fig pudding. People with whom I used to share a quick hello became the touchstones of home. So now she's finding home in people that she's meeting. Surprisingly, along the way, I also discovered some residents didn't exactly see themselves belonging to our town. A mid-50s steelworker conveyed his struggle, understanding Ojai's upscale hipster culture. Ociel, the adored burrito maker, still finds more solace in his original Latinx community. I could relate. Here's the conclusion. While I can trace connections to so many places, literal and figurative, I too have found it difficult to feel connected to a permanent place. So where is my home? Perhaps art can be my home. Through photographs and paintings, I perceive and connect with the world through color, light, and detail as I work to reveal my subconscious thoughts and unadulterated self. So there's that theme of creativity and art making coming back into her essay. In dance, focusing my breath with others, I sync with the ensemble and truly own my physical presence. So implication, here's another place where she finds herself at home. Then again, she says, perhaps for me, airport really is the best answer. It's the in-between space, the crossroads of the world, a place full of people longing for home, people coming to and going from home, where I seem to belong. While I continue to seek answers, striving to understand my own and others' place in this world, you can look for me at both arrivals and departures. So she's delivered something that, and for me, a great ending is it's surprising and inevitable. And so it's surprising to me because I don't expect her to basically not answer the question. She's not saying like, I found home here in this concrete place, but she kind of is. And she's kind of coming back to the place where she began, which makes this a little bit inevitable. So as you're thinking about the ending to your essay, is it surprising and inevitable? Now, I'm not making these terms up. This is from Aristotle, when he talks about a great ending in poetics. This is sort of what can make for a great ending. And it's something to strive for. I want to say to y'all again, listening, this is an incredibly well-crafted essay. She spent a lot of time on it. You don't have to write something that's well-crafted in order to get into a great school. But when it comes to standing out, a few things to notice here. Number one, she's asking a question at the start of the essay. That's a simple thing that you can apply. So number one, what question could I ask at the start of my essay that I could potentially carry throughout that intrigues the reader and gets them wanting to know what comes next? Okay. Second, is there some kind of theme that runs throughout that allows them to sort of get a sense of different sides of you? So in this case, she chose places where she finds herself at home. And even though she never sort of resides and is like, I'm definitely at home here, definitely at home here, we get to learn about her connection to her mom and family. We get to learn about her connection to her writing and her love of food. We also get to learn about her art making self, her photojournalism projects, and even she mentions subtly and briefly here, paintings that she does and dance. So we're getting a sense that this is an artist, truly an artist mind at work, but it's not an essay that's just basically recapping all of her accomplishments because she's going to put those in just a minute in her activities and awards list. Another thing that I mentioned, so I mentioned intellectual curiosity is something that's really nice here, that's really clear. Another quality that's coming through here that admission officers love to see is initiative. So this isn't somebody who just has a question and then just sits back. She's taking initiative to try and find herself. She's taking initiative through this food blog that she started. She's taking initiative by doing this photojournalism project, asking lots of big questions. So you can see her leadership in a way. And by that, I mean like her self-leadership. Now, You'll see later in the application other instances of leadership where she's working with others. But I really like that this is somebody who has curiosity and then does something about it. So those are like, I guess, tips 3 and 4. And then finally, this sort of like thinking about your ending. Is your ending potentially something that could be surprising and inevitable? Something that gives us both sides of that. Okay. Her activities list. So one of the things that I love at the start of this is that she shows her leadership thing. So she's co-head of this, captain of this. And then the fact that this should be number 3, but whatever. She was selected for this is really cool. If you were chosen to do a particular role, I think it's nice to include that. So if somebody nominated you and chose you, put selected in there. In this case, she was selected by the faculty. Now, I'll get into details of this in just a little bit, but one of the main things that I'll say, and I'll share with you a resource on this later, is that I think it's good to get strong active verbs in your activities list descriptions. So notice that she's got organize. She coordinates with the school admin. She co-designs all school diversity workshops. And it's a great way of seeing her in different realms. So imagine that each one of these is a photograph. We see her organizing the speaker series. So that's one bit of work, probably on a laptop. And then she's coordinating with school administration. We see her talking with, some of the adults in her school. And then she's co-designing all school diversity workshops. So that's probably, I would guess, some different group of folks that she's working with to do that. So you can kind of think of each of these as a little snapshot showing you a little mini montage of like, you can see me doing this, see me doing this, see me doing this. Ideally, each one is showing you doing something slightly different. And then boom, in the next activity, we're seeing her a whole different image of her. She's danced for 15 years. Separate from that, we see her leading rehearsals and encouraging new dancers. Separate from that, she's collaborating with the teacher to organize different things. So each one of these shows her dancing maybe on her own, leading rehearsals, so we see leadership there. And then separately from that, she's again working with an adult. We see the collaborator in her, which is another awesome quality that colleges love. I'm not going to go through all these activities just now, but just so you can get a sense of what the student's been up to. You don't have to list all 10 activities. It's totally fine to list 5 or 6. In fact, the average student probably does that. But you'll also see some nice range. She's got some photography that she's done. She has a summer program that she participated in, and it's fine to list, she's applying to Columbia, but she listed that she went to another school. It's totally fine. You don't have to have these on your resume. None of these are like must-dos. There's no such thing as like a must-do to get into college. But sometimes students ask, can I list a summer program? And it's like, yes, that counts as an activity. Tell us what you did. In this case, she investigated social and cultural issues reflected in global art, developed a capstone project on cultural perceptions of home. Notice the theme. Your application does not have to have a theme, by the way. It can totally be just different things that you're interested in doing. This just happened to have a nice tie-in. Your activities list is your brag sheet. It's where you put all the things that you've done. Let it be your adoring parent or teacher who just is like, oh, and then they did this, and then they did this, and they did this. Brag here in as succinct a way as you can so that you can be a little more personal here. You can kind of, I like to say, show up in jeans in your personal statement. Your additional information section is an opportunity to discuss extenuating circumstances, so to explain or to expand on things that you feel like aren't getting enough airtime. So for example, global studies, she's explaining what that is. If I were to read global studies, I might be like, what is that on your transcript? Well, this was an opportunity for her to participate in all these different kinds of classes in 9th and 10th grade. And then as a result, they organized a showcase. And there was nowhere else really on her application that she could talk about that. So she's like, I'm just going to put a few bullet points in here. Doesn't have to take up a ton of space. In fact, it's 76 words, but boom, now I understand what global studies is and means. She won some other awards. So she lists those here. That's an expansion. Food blog, here's another expansion. She didn't have room to put this in her activities list. So she says she's posted 50 entries. She's got 300 followers and a few articles had 2,000 plus readers. Great. Putting those numbers in gives us some impact. That's an expand. Another explain. She says, she had a family situation. Her mother's stage 4 endometrial cancer impacted her family significantly. And since neither of her parents experienced any formal U.S. education, she navigated her academics on her own. And that's great. I mean, and not great. I mean, in terms of like on a human level, but it's enough to give some mention to some of the challenges that she went through and what she did to overcome them, including, navigating academics on her own. Another thing that was worth explaining was She didn't want to be, well, her school canceled all of her AP courses. So what she did is she had to self-study certain courses and take the exam on her own. And if that's true in your situation, this is the place to explain it. Now, I know a bunch of questions are going to come in, and Renee is probably going to be really busy here in a minute with like, can I put this and can I put this? And hopefully Renee can get to your question. If not, join me on the course, and that's usually one of the busiest days that we have. Okay, supplemental essays. Now, these are not this year's prompts. These are last time's prompts because they've shortened this essay. But let me show you, a lot of schools have what's called a why us essay, particularly selective schools. And they essentially ask, why do you want to attend our college or university? Now, many colleges now ask a slightly different version of it. And they ask, what are the skills, qualities, values you're going to bring to our community? And fortunately, she kind of already did that. So this works for those, it still will give you an idea of what goes in these essays. But one of the things I want you to look at as you just scan this essay is notice the capital letters that are appearing in her essay. If I see capital letters in a YS essay, I know a student's done their research. So you can see names of courses, for example, and names of professors. I'm not going to read through the whole thing here, but I want to point out a couple things that the student's doing well. She says, I want to see, feel, and understand humanity across cultures. Awesome. That's like a personal mission statement. At Columbia, I'd focus on art history while exploring urban studies and social justice. Now, she could very well change her major. And I haven't talked to her in a couple of years. It's been maybe a year and a half. I don't know if she actually did change her major, but I wouldn't be surprised because so many students change their major. But what she's doing in this is she's making an argument in this essay for why these would be a great fit for her. She says, I believe obtaining a broader vision of different populations through art is fundamental to understanding humanity and can lend insights into global issues. Columbia, with its unparalleled interactions with the arts and cultures of NYC and the globe, would enable me to do exactly that. Now, friend of a friend told me Columbia really likes you to mention New York. In fact, I think other New York schools do too. And so I recommend if you're applying to somewhere in New York City and you're not mentioning something related to the city, they might wonder, is this student really prepared for New York City life? Because as someone who used to live 20 blocks from New York City, and sorry, from Columbia, it's a particular flavor. It's a particular experience. And so somewhere include New York City, at least a mention, I would say, if you're applying to Columbia, NYU, anyway, the New York City schools. Having produced a research paper on street art in New York City and curated a Columbia mural art exhibit, I'd be excited to see firsthand the connections between creative individuals and their surroundings by attending Latinx Artists Coast to Coast. Learning from this particular professor, an activist and curator, I delve into how art encourages marginalized groups' self-expression and activist efforts. Okay, this is a beautiful YSSA 101. What are we doing here? Here's a thing that I did, and I loved it, and I got a lot out of it, and I hope to do similar work in this particular way in this course or with this professor. And if possible, and here's the particular thing that I'd like to explore. And if you do that several times in your YS, you're in good shape, okay? So again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think that's something to just keep in mind. Remember, I'm not going to be sharing these examples out, by the way. So if you want to, you can look at this, you can watch the recording later. Columbia also used to have a why major essay. And the simple version of this is, I want to see a little montage of what are the moments that have led you to discovering, this is the thing that I want to do. Now, ideally, it's not all stuff that you did as a child prodigy, when you picked up Lego for the first time and you were like loving to build things with your hands. By the way, Lego is a pretty common trope, so try to avoid it, especially if you're an engineer, or just mention it very, very briefly. But what I love about this is that she focuses mostly on high school stuff. So sophomore summer, she did this. Junior year, she did this. Last summer, she did this whole other thing. So we see these experiences that she's had in her high school years that have really prepared her for this particular major, in this case, art history. I think that's all I want to say. There were other like short answers, but Columbia asked you to talk about the books you've read and what are the whatchamacallit, what are the sources of media that you consume? And I'd say for those, my tips are just, be honest and be thorough. So don't leave a lot, on the cutting room floor, as it were. Okay. So that's part one. And that took me about 20 minutes, which I expected to. Great. And along the way, I just want to recap two of the qualities that I mentioned. I think I mentioned three, actually, that college admission officers are looking for. Number one, intellectual curiosity. And you can see it throughout her application. from the stuff that she's been exploring in her personal statement, to her activities list, the things that she's been involved with, to her supplemental essays, where she talks a little bit more about some of the projects that she's gotten into. The second one that I mentioned is initiative. We see her getting involved in stuff. This isn't somebody who just sat back with her questions. She's like working actively to explore them, to pursue them. Awesome. The third one is something like, you can call this one collaboration. You could also call this one helping others, because I see both of those in this application, and you could argue that those are the same or different. But I see her working with others through some of the ways that she's describing her activities. And I also see her helping others. She's, working with younger dancers, for example. So there's, that in spades. And then also through some of the activities that she's been involved with, which are like centered on building community. So I'm happy to take questions about that application if you want at the end. But I want to shift to talking a little bit about, if you don't have something as sort of specific and niche to write about, what if you're working with a common topic, as this next student was? How do you stand out? Well, I've often said that if you want a boring essay, choose a common topic, AKA soccer, make common connections. Soccer has taught me discipline, hard work, and perseverance, and then use common language. So common language in a soccer essay might be like, teamwork makes the dream work, or, some version of that. But if you're hoping to stand out with your personal statement, if possible, choose an uncommon topic. Okay. Now, in this case, the essay we looked at was an example of an uncommon topic. It's the search for home. But you could argue it was a common topic of someone who, well, in some ways felt like she was between cultures, and it was about finding meaning and belonging. But it's the way that she achieved that. She's making some unexpected connections, connecting to values we might not expect. And there's lots of language that's uncommon. In other words, she's writing sentences that are particular to her. Nobody else could have written some of those sentences. In fact, most of them. But what if you are writing about soccer? By the way, I don't recommend it. But if you are, here's an example of a really good soccer essay. And I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs here, just for the sake of time. My room is by far the most worn down in my house. What? This is a soccer essay? Yeah, stay with me. Broken plastic trophies from my youth, scuff marks on the freshly painted walls, and chipped blinds that hang by a thread. No, I don't have anger issues. I just always have a soccer ball glued to my feet. But my obsession with soccer hasn't only resulted in a messy room. It's also led me down many valuable and fulfilling paths. Okay, he's doing that thing. He's raising a question here. Okay, well, how is it that soccer has led you down many valuable and fulfilling paths? What are they? Tell me more. Here we go. My interest in geography, what? Sprouted from my curiosity about the location of soccer teams around the world. Now, this is an example to me of an uncommon connection, because never before have I read a soccer essay that talks about a love of geography and an interest in geography. But sure enough, here it is. From Germany and France fighting at each other's throats to Yugoslavia splitting up into 5 nations, including some at war, geography is so much more to me than countries on a map. When I spend hours taking geography quizzes online, I'm not just learning where countries are in relation to one another, I'm also gaining the contextual background I need to pursue deeper historical questions. Ooh, insight. Okay, so here's what's working well. An unexpected connection, aka a value we didn't see coming. Some details about how you've explored that, in this case, this connections between geography and then connecting it to history. But then there's an insight. The student says, I'm not just learning where countries are in relationship to one another, in relation to one another, I'm gaining the contextual background I need to pursue deeper historical questions. Now, if there was more room, the student might go into detail about, well, what are some of those deeper historical questions? But already the student's going beyond the soccer's taught me about discipline, hard work, and perseverance, and I'm learning about this other dimension of them. I think a great topic for your personal statement is one that is elastic, which is to say stretchy enough to talk about different sides of you. In this case, for example, the love of geography. Watching soccer fans from other countries open my eyes to their contrasting cultures. Here's the new value. Whether it's the cheers they chant or how they celebrate a win. But for me, it's much more personal. Living in the US, I haven't always felt connected to my Indian heritage. Okay, common theme, connect this one to the last essay. However, when I traveled to India, not only did I see soccer being played barefoot in the poorest streets of Calcutta, I also explored my background and met family members I'd only heard stories about. I tasted homemade foods like luchi that my Tama and Dadu grew up eating, and I witnessed unfamiliar customs my relatives take part in, like eating with their hands. Soccer brought me to the realization that I've been missing an important connection to myself, one I look forward to exploring. Now, this is a great example of not only an insight, which is like, and by an insight, I mean like, give me something that I wouldn't know from reading elsewhere in your application. Like, I don't know that you're missing this important connection to yourself. I appreciate knowing that, you know. And then there's also a little vulnerability here. The student isn't showing up as like, you know, I'm fully made and done. The student's like, yeah, there's like parts of myself that I'm interested in exploring. And what this shows to me is not like, you know, I think some student might be self-conscious that they don't feel more or shame about being not more connected to their culture. But actually what I see here is curiosity and openness. And so those are like values that are coming through here. So far, this soccer essay has explored geography and cultures. Stoked. And we'll do one more. A scoreline can often be misleading. Just because a team won doesn't mean they're the better team. Statistics, such as possession percentage, shots on goal, and passes completed, are key indicators of a team's dominance. So now we're talking about soccer and numbers. When soccer revealed how much I enjoyed data analysis, I sought out other complex subjects. You see how this topic is basically just an off-ramp to talking about different things a student's interested in? Statistics, you know, AP Chem, AP Physics. I came to realize I'm an analytical person and that I subconsciously use data to inform my daily life. For example, I often find myself predicting outcomes from phosphate concentrations to score lines. Now, phosphate concentrations is another example of intellectual curiosity and, you know, what I call geeky language. So I love this as an example of just little, you know, hints of like stuff that I, you know, nerd out about. But I've also learned there can be unexpected variables like the power outage in the Super Bowl or unseen residue on tools that can lead to alternate results. When I make a wrong prediction, it teaches me there are always, or if you like, often unforeseen factors, just like on a soccer pitch. So here again, the student is coming in with a little insight that helps land the plane. And by land the plane, I mean like there's something here that's like that answers so what? So what can you learn from this? First of all, I want to encourage you, especially if you're choosing a common topic, to explore making uncommon connections, which is to say, brainstorm values that we might not expect. So I'm just going to Google values exercise, and I'll share this in the chat. If you've been to one of my webinars before, you've probably seen me talk about this. But with this values exercise, simply put, what you can do is brainstorm the values that you think might be obvious from your topic. So in soccer, what are some of the obvious ones here? Something like leadership. I'm the one on the team who likes to call the shots and tell people where to go. I mentioned some others, discipline or finding, balance, because I spend a lot of time playing soccer, but I have to also balance it with schoolwork. That's a somewhat common trope. I want to know, what has soccer taught you about, I don't know, purpose? Or what has soccer taught you about the importance of ritual, and how does ritual show up in your life? Because I hold that your topic, the thing you're writing about, isn't really your topic. You are your topic. You are the thing that you're writing about. Your topic, quote unquote, is just really an excuse to share all of these different beautiful, specific sides of yourself. So it's kind of like the topic is you, it's how you have manifested your skills, your qualities, your values. And in some cases, if you can find some common theme, then you can not focus on the theme. So make 10% of your essay soccer, make 90% about the skills, qualities, values you're going to bring to a college campus. So if you've already written a draft, ask yourself, how much of my essay is about the topic, and how much is in topic in quotes, because again, you're the topic, and how much of it is currently about the skills, qualities, values I'm going to bring to the campus community. And you can do that in green or yellow, right? Green for the stuff that's talking about skills, qualities, values, and then yellow for the parts that are kind of setting that up or just talking about something that maybe isn't giving us a clear sense of that. Okay. Again, I'll welcome questions at the end here. Let me give you some tips on the activities list. And I'm going to give this through a blog post that I've put out that I think will be helpful. And I'll put this in the chat as well. Here we go. So when it comes to writing your activities list, there are 3 different exercises that I want to recommend. I'm sorry, my last link, the values exercise, I sent it only to hosts and panelists. So let me I'll share both of the links at once. Okay, here we go. So this extracurricular activities guide is, I think, pretty helpful. And there's a YouTube video on this where I walk through this specifically. But the three main things, and you can check out the video if you want. Look at that. I'm wearing the same shirt. It looks like I only have one shirt. Longer beard too. Better verbs. And I've got a little guide in here that's got some better verbs. More content, which is to say, I've got a set of questions that you can ask yourself that are going to help you to think through what else did you do? What were your other responsibilities? The other things that you've, spent some time thinking about, sorry, pop-ups. What are some other things that you spent some time developing, thinking about? Like, what were your responsibilities when you were involved with whatever you were involved with? And then skills and values. Like, this is what colleges are looking for. Again, who are you going to, I've said this 3 times already, but who are you going to be on the college campus? And there's a way that you can do that. I have something called a value scan that will allow you to sort of do the X-ray analysis of your descriptions once you've written them. Okay. So there's a full guide here with lots of different step-by-step, and I hope you'll find it useful. The other one, so I'm just literally Googling myself, college essay guide, additional info college essay guide. And I'm doing that live here with you because I want to show you that a lot of these resources, if you Google the thing you're looking for in college essay guide, there's probably something that I've written on it. But for the additional information section, you'll see this section that basically says, is there anything else you want to share with us? You click yes. And then you've got 650 words here. Okay. And in these 650 words, this is where you're either expanding or explaining, if you like. Okay. So what do you put in here? There are a bunch of different things, a bunch of different examples of this, but this is an example of expanding. So if there's a particular activity that wouldn't fit in your activities list, great, expand selectively. You don't need to put everything in there. You can be brief, focus on the specifics, focus on impact, and then don't worry about special formatting. You can just do like a little hyphen and then write the thing. What else? What else? Let's see. Oh yeah, this is me and Tom on a different session walking through this. So anyway, I won't go through all that because you can basically Google it and walk through it. But again, additional info section for expanding and explaining. Expanding on and explaining anything that you feel like is going to be, and I'll put maybe Diana, you could put the additional info link in the chat. And you'll find lots of examples there. Okay. We're going to shift to Q&A, and I know that we've had Q&A the whole time, but thanks, Renee. Hope you're holding up. But let me just tell you a little bit I want to share just briefly for a couple minutes about these 2 courses that I'm leading, because I'm pretty excited about them, and I think they're really good. And I'd love to hang out with y'all more. So let me walk you through each of these, and I'm just bringing up the link. And maybe, Diana, if you wouldn't mind just throwing in the link so that folks can see what this is. So essentially, the purpose of this course is I wanted to work with more students than just the small number of students that I work with or that my team and I work with each year. And the question was, how do I do that in a bigger way for something that's cost effective? And from the student side, it's for you who are trying to figure out, what do I figure out? How do I know what to write about? How do I know that it's like a quote unquote good topic that's going to help you stand out? How do I know how to revise? Like, what are the specific exercises that I use to revise, especially if I don't have somebody who's like, helping me through this process. And then how do you know when you're done? That's that's something else we talk about. So what it is it's a live course that I lead, just like this, 90-minute sessions. We have 4 of them. And you'll see, we answer a whole bunch of questions from the specifics of structure. How do you weave in your achievements so it doesn't sound like you're bragging? What should you not write about? And essentially, the sessions we've got 11th and 18th, and then October 2nd and 9th. So it's coming up in about a month. The focus for session 1 is brainstorming. So what we're doing in that session is basically, I'm giving you a bunch of different exercises for thinking about your topics. And throughout the course, what I do is I have this thing called the Choose Your Own Adventure essay tool, where each day is devoted to each week essentially is devoted to a different topic. So brainstorming is week 1. We do outlining and writing in week 2. Revising is week 3, and then refining is week 4. And this tool here has tons of different essay examples, just like a bunch that you can check out, that are connected to different styles of essay. So you'll have at least 8 different options for different kinds of essays that you can write. And these 8 different kinds of essays are really malleable. In other words, they can become lots of different pieces. You'll see if you want on the page, there's some like nice stuff that people have said about the course. But it's pretty comprehensive. And my goal here is that by the end of this month, which is to say early to mid-October, before essays are due, that you've got an essay that you feel really, a personal statement that you feel really excited about. And and then if you're like, okay, I feel like I've got a personal statement, and because it's not just about the personal statement, we segue right after. Well, actually, we run these concurrently. In the summer, when we do the summer version, we do the personal statement first, and then we do supplemental essays. But what we do for the fall is essentially we lead the personal statement course right next to the supplemental essays course. So what this helps you work on is when you're trying to figure out how do I up-level that activities list and make sure that it's really awesome? How do I even know which topics to put in my personal statement versus in my supplemental essays? How do I work on those supplements? They were all released about a week ago. How do I know, how do I find topics that essentially will work for lots of different prompts? That's one of the things we focus on early is how do you write what I call super essays, which is essays that'll work for lots of different prompts. So we'll talk about structure. We cover pretty much all of the major essays, the why us, the why major, the diversity essay, the community essay, and lots more. And I kind of open it up to, really any essays that you want to focus on. I do lots of live review. Again, the session, if you sign up for the first one, you get 50% off the second one. So yeah, commercial over. And then if you're like, yeah, I'm interested in one-on-one support, we do that too, if you're interested in that. Okay. 44, past the hour. Perfect. Let's shift to Q&A. I know Renee has been, actually, well, let's put that, can we put the other link in, Diana, for the second course? That would be super awesome. Actually, I think I have it right here. And I'll also put in the link for folks who are interested in one-on-one. Aha, beat you. Um, will you for folks who are interested in one-on-one, will you throw that link in as well? That would be super awesome. Actually, I have it here. I think I'm going to beat you on this one. Yep, I am. Okay, cool. You right? I'm totally coming for your job. All right. Pausing for just a minute because actually, for some folks, they're like, I need time to think of questions. So let me literally have like 30 seconds of silence, of radio silence is what I meant to say. That's it. So that you can think of questions. And then I'm going to let you put them into the chat. And some of you are like looking at the course pages. So I'll just pause for half a minute. Lovely questions coming in. I'm not going to be able to answer all 110, but I'm going to get to as many as I can. Okay. Renee, if you'll start at the end with the most recent questions, so the ones that came in at like 46 minutes past the hour and go up, I will work from my way down and we'll see if we can meet in the middle. I can't promise y'all that we're going to get to 110, but now 126 questions, but we'll get to as many as we can. Okay. Because I love to do this, I'm going to do this as a kind of lightning round where rather than answer like 3 questions in depth, I'm going to try to get to like as many as I can in like short snippets. So I'm going to imagine that you're firing these off to me quickly. And Diana, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is just hit answer live once I've answered a question. All right, here goes. What's the best way to start off a college essay? If you Google start college essay guy, you'll see 9 different ways to start a college essay, and it'll give you so many cool ideas. But the simple answer to this is raise a question in our mind that will intrigue us for the entire 650 words. For supplemental essays, do colleges generally prefer storytelling or more direct approach, since the word count's limited to 250, 300 words? If it's 250 words, I would recommend more direct approach if it's that short, especially for the University of California personal insight questions. Colleges want a little more information than poetry. They're trying to determine what are those qualities that will allow you to, what are those qualities that you're going to be bringing onto your college campus, rather than are you a good writer? Okay, so I would lean more on the informational direct approach. If you want to bring a little poetry, great, but reside maybe more in here than way over here. How can I effectively balance personal anecdotes with reflection and analysis in my essay? This is going to be like a really sort of broad answer, Francis, but I would say Give personal anecdotes only in so much as they set up skills, qualities, values that you bring to a college campus. So if you want a ratio, 1 parts setup and story, 3 parts skills, qualities, values you're going to bring. So ideally, all of the things that you're writing about are showing what are the skills and qualities you're going to bring to a college campus. Is it advisable to reference another piece of writing in your essay in order to bring up a point? No, it's fine. On my personal essay, should I focus on one story or should I bring in a bunch of different aspects of my life? I'm a fan of going a little bit broader. 3 to 5 different sides of you, I think is nice. If you do one story, it better be a really good story and you better have a really amazing insight. And I find that's harder to do well. So I'm a fan of what I call the montage approach, where you have a common theme, but you're showing different sides of yourself. Don't have to do that, but I find that whatever you've got in that one paragraph or that whole essay can probably be squished into a single paragraph. You can probably communicate that more efficiently, and you can probably show other sides of yourself. How advisable is it to put questions in the personal statement? Up to you. Usually, if there are questions, I want to know what are the specific questions that you're interested in exploring or that you have explored. How do you suggest improving specificity and creating those big question intellectual curiosity moments in your essay? Um, Brainstorm what are some of the big questions that you're interested in exploring, and then maybe weave them in. I don't think I have an interesting story. What should I do? I'm not sure what to write about or how to make my story compelling. Join me in a month on the course. I'd love to have you. If you want the free version, if you Google college essay guy, go to YouTube. Actually, here, smash that like button. I feel like I have to say that every time I talk about YouTube. But if you go to YouTube, you go to the college essay guy channel, college essay guy, 7 types personal statement. I'm going to put this link in the chat. If you're looking to brainstorm new ideas, first of all, exist, or maybe you've never seen it. Sorry. Do your boy a favor. While you're there, hit me up with a quick subscribe because we got fresh content delivered on the weekly, usually a couple times a week. But for those of you who are interested in brainstorming alternate topic ideas, check out that video. That's the video that basically, that's the content that starts the course. I wanted to write a creative personal statement, but I'm unsure how to do it. Any advice? It starts with the topic. Check out the video that I just linked. I'm thinking about formatting my college essay to mirror the scientific method because it shows the way I think. Plus, I want to be an environmental engineer. Could this work? Yep, sounds cool. Try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. Is it good to write an essay about how I was bullied for my height and how I changed myself later? Maybe. I would say try it. I think oftentimes essays that are focused on challenges show one dimension of a student, and I really like to see lots of different sides of you. So I'd love to see that as part of a montage where I get to see other sides of you. Is an essay about the impact of support systems on academic achievement a bad college essay? I don't know if I would say bad, but I think it would be good. If you feel like you didn't have great support systems, put that in your additional info, talk about what you did, what you learned from the experience, and then write your personal statement on something else. Because then otherwise, I think it could sound like you're complaining. I'm struggling with brainstorming. What are your tips or advice? Check out the YouTube video that I linked. Smash that like button. Will it be good to write about problems I faced in a school and later started loving school? I want to show how the problems developed my character. Maybe that sounds like additional info. You can put challenges, effects, what I did, what I learned, and just answer those in bullet points in the additional information section. And then you can write about whatever else you want in the personal statement. How do you write a UC essay, that's the University of California, about overcoming challenges without sounding too negative? It's a matter of degree. If it's 350 words, which it is for the University of California, I would say devote no more than 75 words to describing the challenge and the effects. I want to see 150 or 200 words on what you did about it, and another 100 or so words on what you learned through the experience. So challenges and effects, squish them up into the start. What I did about it, what I learned. But also ask yourself, could these challenges be something that I could just briefly mention with what I did, what I learned in the additional comments section of the UCs? Because that could also allow you to free up space for another UC personal insight question. I see this person's extracurricular description doesn't have numbers. Should I be more focused on numbers, even if it's not like a huge impact? I would say it doesn't have numbers. Some do and some don't. I would say if the numbers, if they're impressive from your perspective, Tiffany, then put them in. And if you're not sure, you can just ask somebody. Does raising $100, that sound impressive? You know, maybe not so much. Is raising $5,000 impressive? Yeah, totally. So decide if it feels impressive. Or not, and then put the numbers in. Did she end up getting into Columbia? She did. She went there. She's graduating soon, I think like next year. And she was super ecstatic. I forgot to mention that, but yeah. Let's see. I'm an international student who homeschooled for secondary school. Most of my Like my extracurriculars are from primary and elementary school. I would say just explain that. And you're on a gap year. Yeah. I would say explain that in your additional info. You're going to probably use that additional info a lot if you're a homeschooling student. Explain all the extenuating circumstances, what you've done, how homeschooling has, made you an awesome learner, person, human, all the things. I would put that, put that in your additional info. Should you try to fill out all 10 spots in the activities? No, don't necessarily need to. A 7 or 8 is fine. Can you put information relating to your financial circumstances in the additional info if you want? I would be interested. I'm really curious. Could we do a quick poll, Diana? I'd be curious of the students present, which students are domestic, which is to say you live in the U.S. and you're applying as a national, and then which students are international. I'd just be curious to get a little poll. We'll say like IMA. So this is just for students and domestic, which is to say from the U.S. or international. Let us know in the chat. I'm just curious who's here. Would someone need to put an AP explanation? Not necessarily. No. If it's already on the school profile, that's fine. The school profile is the information that the school is submitting, so that's great. I was waitlisted at 2 schools. Now I'm planning to apply ED and EA. What are my odds? Don't know without knowing more about you. I would say if just generally your odds of getting into Wesleyan and Williams are not high. So I would just encourage you to expand your list in a general sense. Can you submit different personal statements to different schools? You can. So you can basically, if you want, thanks for the poll, you can apply to a school, submit the personal statement, and then edit your personal statement, write a whole different personal statement, and submit that to another school. So that's fine too. So you can tweak your Common App. At least you have been able to every year in the past. I haven't looked this week to make sure that you can do it. But if you're wondering about anything like that, you can message the Common App. Their customer service is really good, and they'll get back to you pretty quick. I hear it's not a good idea to put some data of the college because it's something that they've known. How can I mention to avoid a negative reaction? No, just connect it back to you. Like if you mention a thing about them, just say why it's meaningful to you. Let's see, if I have several sides of myself, should I try to braid them all together in the personal statement or focus on 1 or 2 mostly? The sides are political science, engineering, and Chinese. I don't know much about you, Peter. We'd have to go through a whole brainstorming process to sort of figure that out. Join the course if you want. I'd love to have you. Again, it's pay what you can, so no financial barrier to joining. And it would be hard for me to answer that question. Any way to review my letters of rec through this platform? How are you reviewing your letters of rec? You're not supposed to see your letters of rec. So, no. You're supposed to sign a thing, in fact, that says that you're not able to see your letters of rec. Can I add a subject that I self-studied for in the activity section? Yes. Ethan outlined elaborating on activities in the additional info section, but USC sent an email specifically indicating to not use this section for more activities or an explanation of activities. It goes on to say, your activity summary was the perfect place to highlight your involvement, so please include that info there and not in the additional information section. Then do not do it for USC. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. That's the first time I've ever heard of a college saying that. And now that you said that to me, I'm gonna make a note. And Diana, will you send that to me as a Slack message? Because I want to include that specifically in a note in the blog that's like about how to write the USC supplemental questions. Because if USC specifically doesn't want that, then don't do that. Great. Listen to the school. Same on another tip. If the school tells you, hey, please do not send additional letters of recommendation, don't do it. I moved to the US 2 years ago in my sophomore year, and now I'm a senior. It took me time to get used to the system here, so I don't really have a lot of activities. Put in your additional info. Can you put a link on something you've done in the additional info? Yes. Will they click it? Depends on how you describe it. But they can click links. Should I write my additional info that I studied, graduated high school outside the US, and now I'm in New York, I'm a US citizen? Go for it. What are examples of common topics? If you YouTube college essay guy common topics, you'll see a list. There's a YouTube video on that. If you look here, so I thought we were supposed to see some. Okay. How does one acquire research opportunities? Do you just email professors? Yes. But if you're getting ready to apply, if you're like a rising senior, it might be a little bit too late. But if you're if you're in 9th, 10th, or 11th grade, yes, you can do that. This is the short answer. A student I'm advising wants to know if she should include her activities list in her activities list. A trip she took with her school to the Galapagos Islands, another one she'll take. It was a struggle to raise the funds for these trips. I love it when students include details of the trip. So we worked hard to raise money for this. I love when students include those details in the additional info. Do you submit a single personal statement to all colleges? Can you change it? So you can change it. You submit a single personal statement to most of the schools that you're applying to. But in some cases, yes, you'll be able to edit it. And I would say write it with that in mind, that you're going to be sending it to multiple schools. Can I write an essay about, okay, there's lots of questions about, I want to try to zoom back and find questions that might apply more broadly. Ethan said the first thing you should ask yourself is, what question can I ask that's going to intrigue readers to the end of the essay? If we don't do too many activities, how do we write about the 5 things we do? Check out the activities list guide that I put in the chat. It's up there. It's the activities list guide. It applies whether you've got 1 activity, 5, or 27. What's the difference between supplemental essays and the personal statement? So the personal statement is 1 essay that you'll write, probably submitted through the Common App if you're applying to private schools, and it goes to the 10 or 12 schools that you're applying to. Supplemental essays are separate essays that, like, USC will have a set of supplemental essays. Michigan has its own essays. Stanford has its other essays. So these are all, those schools have their specific essays based on what they're looking for. So USC won't see Michigan's essays. Cool. We got about 80% domestic students. Interesting. And 18% international students. Cool. Unexpected connections. If my connection's kind of corny or is a stretch, would it be considered negatively? Not negatively, just more like neutrally. Just more like, okay, cool. I would say if you've already recognized something that's corny or a stretch, I would say revise that. How do you write a Y major essay when your Common App essay talks about how you decided to choose a particular major? New personal statement idea? Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I guess the short answer, the 2 ways. One is like write about stuff about your major that is not in your personal statement and like take it further and talk about specific things that you'll maybe include a little YS details. But another option is maybe write a second personal statement that goes specifically for that school, and then take what you put in the personal statement and use that for the Y major, maybe a short version of it. Which prompt is the personal statement following? Topic of your choice, my favorite one. So colleges don't care too much about which Common App, like there's not like a better or worse Common App prompt. Prompt 1 is really broad, really open-ended, tell us something about you, basically, about what's shaped you. So usually the essays that you'll see on the blog and in these sessions will either be about, response to prompt 1 or prompt 7. Can I add multiple stories under one theme? Yes, if you keep it short. Usually they're probably not stories, but they're usually instances or examples of whatever the topic or the common thing is. So, but it's like, for example, I wouldn't necessarily do a montage of like times I've overcome challenges, because I think it's just harder to have the whole arc of the story in like a single paragraph. Can you write essays that focus on one anecdote in a specific lesson? For sure. I notice most of these essays touch on various parts of the student's life. It's just the reason I think that that's difficult to do is that I think you kind of put all your eggs in the one anecdote. And if the reader's only kind of interested in that anecdote, or only the insight is only kind of surprising or unexpected, it's possible to do well. I think it's just harder to do well. And I think what I'm proposing, this montage approach, is just a bit more conservative, because if the 3rd paragraph doesn't work out, it's okay. Maybe the 4th paragraph can pick up the slack. So I think it puts a little bit less pressure on you as a writer to like find the perfect story or find the perfect moment that reveals the perfect insight. It's a little bit more like, well, here are a variety of things. I also want to confess my bias that I'm a buffet guy. Like when I go to a buffet, I want to try a little bit of everything. So that's kind of like a personal bias and preference that I bring. But I've also just seen students struggle with like, I don't know if this is my story, and I'm like, well, if you think of your story as more broadly being like different instances, experiences that have helped shape who you are, I think bringing in a variety of those sides of yourself can be a really great way to get to know you in a bigger sense. I know we're at time. I'm going to stay for a few more minutes. Renee may drop off because, it's 8 o'clock now on the East Coast. But I'll stay for a few more minutes. I want to say again, I hope to see some of y'all on the course if you're interested. And, feel free to reach out to us. You've got all the links in the chat. And please, like, stay in touch with us. We're going to be doing more sessions in the coming weeks and months, kind of, going along through this process. And we'd love to hang out some more. Okay. Let's do like maybe 5 more minutes. Renee, when you got to go, feel free to go. Okay. Is creating a club at a school a common essay topic? Absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily focus your personal statement on an extracurricular activity, because a lot of that can be put in the supplemental essays, or it's going to show up in your activities list. So Yeah. So, and it's just harder to stand out with like, I created this club and here's what it did. It's also, I feel like it's just, I'm interested again in sort of getting to know these different sides of you. Now, if that club, let's say debate club, if you feel like a powerful way to show different skills, qualities, and values that you'll bring to the college campus, sure, great, go for it. I've seen students do it well. Um, I'll give you an example. There's the hiking club essay that this student is writing about a common topic, which is like Boy Scouts. And by writing about Boy Scouts, he does it in an uncommon way. If you search, I'll put this in the chat, but if you search hiking on this blog that I'm putting, you'll see that he's basically combining the club Boy Scouts with something that doesn't always go with Boy Scouts. In this case, like history. So he's making some like he's sort of combining two things, and that kind of helps it to stand out. But then the other thing that he's bringing in is that he says at the end of this essay, when I'm hiking, and he talks about hiking with Boy Scouts, I'm not just a hiker. And he lists three different identities that he has developed and been able to express through Boy Scouts, through hiking. And that to me is like chef's kiss. That I mean, because I want to learn about your identities. I want to learn about the different sides of you. I'm less interested in like your Eagle Scout project. Cool that you did an Eagle Scout project, but put that on your activities list and the hours you spent. And then for everybody but USC, like, if you feel like there's more stuff there to expand on, great. I'm glad that someone shared that because I'll be interested to see if more schools ask for that. I think the reason they're probably doing that is it's an equity issue and they feel like, um, students who are getting support on their applications or maybe using the additional info more. That's why I'm trying to put out the free info for all the students and make it, put the info out there. But actually, we might put in the additional info section a list of schools that do not want that. And if others have heard of schools that ask you not to do that in their additional info, email us at help@collegeessaguy.com. And Diana, will you Slack me because I'd like to also include in the additional info like schools, maybe including now USC, schools that don't like to see that in the additional info. Let's see. Can you write about activities that don't necessarily count as an extracurricular, like the activities you don't list in the Common App? Yeah, for sure. You can also, if you Google activities that count College Essay Guy, you'll see a list of unconventional activities that you can also put on your activities list that students don't often think about. Um, let's see. If you're writing with a thematic thread, you have to talk about each topic with the same depth. I mean, do your best to do it, Francis. Like, it's hard to go, if you're going broad with this montage, it's hard to go deep in just a paragraph. But you'll notice, and if you just Google sample essays, college essay guy, you'll see lots of students using this montage format and going somewhat deep in a few different ways. So it's hard to say that in sort of general, but I would say to think back to the soccer essay that I went over, there's some depth, but it's not a ton of depth when the student is writing about how soccer has connected their love of geography and their interest in history. It doesn't go into like, well, what are those historical questions? Because it's moving on to the other side. And that's one of the like the other side of themselves, which is like connecting to culture or really not connecting to culture and realizing that. And then statistics. So the downside of doing this jumping around is that we don't maybe get as much depth or exploration. So if you're more like a depth person and you're like, I want to just focus on one particular thing, great, go for it. And if you've got something that you feel like you can write about, awesome. Um, and I've seen students do this with like, so there's a student, if you watch, there's another YouTube video on food that I put out that's like talking about how this student how food has helped them learn different lessons in their life. It's arguable whether it's like, well, did he explore that in depth? Well, he definitely is exploring food in depth because it's affected him and his extracurricular activities in lots of different ways. But in terms of the different sides of himself, like he only devotes a paragraph to each one. So that's an example, maybe sort of like a hybrid example where it is actually choosing just one thing, but it's exploring the different ways that thing has like what that's brought out of him, lessons he's learned. Yeah. Can you develop a very beautiful, inviting essay without winning main awards or getting a top rank in a competition? Do universities look at this majorly? No, I wouldn't say that, it's not like you have to win awards in order to get into college. And you can definitely write a great essay without winning awards, for sure. How would I come up with uncommon connections? Okay, so this is going to take a little time, Matthew, but I would say spend some time staring at that values exercise that I linked in the chat. Some students are going to be like really fast at it, and some students it's going to take a little bit longer. And that's just, I think that's just the way our brains work. Some students are wired for uncommon connections, and they're like, oh my gosh, this water bottle reminds me of like conservation efforts that my school has been struggling to make lately. It also reminds me of the color blue and how I could name 6 different Pantone colors that are related to this. And I could even tell you the numbers related to them. It also reminds me of how I can't, for some reason, like keep a water bottle. I'm constantly forgetting things like my water bottle, but I've never lost my wallet in 20 years of owning it. This is me making this up. And that's how my brain works. Like I just look at this and like I can think of 6 different things that I could say about this water bottle. Also because maybe I studied improv. Um, but for some students, they look at this and they're like, that's a water bottle. Like, I don't know what else to say about that. So if that's you, if you're like, it's just a water bottle, give yourself some more time. It might be fun to do this with a partner, but essentially whatever your topic is, try to first clear cut, do what I call a prescribed burning, brainstorm stuff that, people would obviously say about this thing, and then don't say those things. All right, last one. Do you support the idea of writing about a passion project or research for a personal essay? Um, I don't. I support writing about a passion project or research you've done in a supplemental essay or putting in your activities list. Or if you do want to put it in there, put it in there briefly in just a paragraph. I wouldn't make that your main topic. And that's just my personal bias. I want to learn a variety of skills, qualities, values. I want to learn about your personality. If you can do that through the passion project, great. I just think it's hard. I don't want to like send you in that direction. I want to encourage you to think of other possibilities for your personal statement. See YouTube video in the chat above for ideas there. Okay. That's what I got. Renee, I don't know if you're still there and you want to unmute and say hi. If not, that's totally fine. But thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Diana, for keeping up. How many questions? 112 questions might be a new record. And Haley Huggett has won the new book. So for those of you who didn't join early next time because we sent out a Google form. We can actually let's link the Google form one more time. And let's do this. Let's give out another free book and we'll follow up via email with whoever wins. So thank you. We've got the Google form in there. For those of you who are interested, fill out the Google form and let us know about you, who you are, what you're about. And then we'll follow up with a second free book winner. And then if you wouldn't mind, Diana, just let Jasmine know that we're having 2 book winners this time. So rapid fire extra free book opportunity. We're going to log off here. You all can fill out the form. It's in the chat. And take your time, whatever, 5 minutes, whatever it takes. And we'll follow up with someone. We will choose randomly. Thanks y'all for being here, staying up and staying late with us. Some of you probably very late. And we'll see you next time. Bye.